Welcome to week 5 of the BardiCasino.com Snooker Premier League, live from Inverness. Tonight's matches line up like this. The Masters champion, the brilliant Mark Selby, takes on this season's surprise package, Marco Fu. And that's followed by world champion and world number 1 Neil Robertson up against the rejuvenated form of former world number 1 Mark Williams. Hello, good to see you again. 2 great matches for you. As you've just seen, our second match features current world number 1 and world champion up against former world number 1 and former world champion. But as things stand, it's the current world champion Neil Robertson that's currently bottom of the Premier League, but there's still a long way to go. We're going to meet the boys in just a sec, but first here's a quick reminder of exactly what happened last week in the Premier League.
Now then, China versus England, and a vital match for both of them. He's done well.
That was a nice shot. Had a chance to win the frame.
It was clean and it was impressive.
Does look good here. What a great shot. Mark Selby might find a way of getting his own back here.
It was a struggle. Ding was 1-0 ahead and 44-0 ahead. But now it's all square. Super clean pot from Ding Junhui.
Very good shot.
Class and fluency combined.
He's one of the most fluent players in the game, is Ding.
Ding Junhui has to be regarded as the best Asia so far has produced. It would appear as though Selby's going to leave Essex a defeated man. The happiest player, Ding. He wins for the first time.
Thank you.
Whatever they say, there will be an extra edge to this one. Make no bones about it. There are a few better cueists than Sean Murphy.
This is frame ball. Well, more evidence of some nerves.
He won't show any emotion. Neither will Murphy. But Murphy will be hurt by that. In terms of pure cueing, that's the best we've seen tonight. Into the pocket like a bullet. There's only one Ronnie O'Sullivan. Murphy has done O'Sullivan a big favour, you know. He's made him interested.
It's not over yet. This looks do or die, doesn't it? What a tremendous pot.
Pink and black will take him ahead for the first time in the contest. 3-2, 1 more to go.
Now, this is Ronnie's chance. He's not held back there one bit.
Century break number 609 in professional competition. They've provided a right royal show.
Yeah, another draw for the Rocket, Ronnie O'Sullivan. That's 3 from 3 now. Ding Junhui top of the league. As you can see, it's very, very tight indeed. Neil Robertson, world champion, played one, still yet to get off the mark. I'm joined, as like most weeks, by former world number 3 and BCE international champion from the 80s, the brilliant Neil Foulds. Neil, very briefly, let me talk about last week, because the Premier League, I think, for players that we've got in it, is the best we've ever had. Yet it's so incredibly tight, isn't it?
Very tight, very tough to get in that top 4 for the finals weekend at the end of November. And last week, you know, I thought it was really a great week of snooker with a little bit of added spice of Ronnie O'Sullivan taking on Sean Murphy. It was a slight grudge match, nothing too serious, but it was a really good week of snooker.
I think it's good for sport, though, isn't it? Because we don't want 1 or 2 players just running away. We want it to go down to the wire, don't we?
Well, Ronnie used to dominate this tournament. He used to farm this. It was a little benefit every year, wasn't it? But it's not quite like that now. And he's played 3 and he's drawn 3, so he's not in particularly great shape.
Do you think that the fact that no one is running away with it, that we can't even at this stage, because we are at the halfway house. In fact, some players have already played their 3rd match. Obviously, with 7, they're going to play just 6 games. Do you think it's impossible to predict the final 4?
It is, because I think Ding's actually played 4 matches and he's top, but they've got games in hand on him, so it is very, very tough. And of course, the one you've all got to wonder about is Neil Robertson, who has just never really shown any great aptitude for this. It's the only thing he's struggled with. He's at the bottom, but like you say, he's got games in hand.
He has indeed, but I wonder what's better, games in hand or points in the bag. Let's have a look at what the bookies make of it tonight. Interesting, actually. Masters champion Mark Selby, even money against an in-form Marco Fu, 2.5 to 1, 5 to 2. And look at that, Neil Robertson, world champion, world number 1, world open champion as well, nearly 2 to 1 against Mark Williams, who's favourite in that game, 11 to 8. Is that surprising?
I think it's surprising because I don't think the odds would be like that if there was no draw involved. I think that someone like Neil Robertson would start favoured against Mark Williams based on what he's achieving. But I think the bookmakers are aware that in this tournament he hasn't quite cracked it yet, has he?
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot as I always do. First match, tough. Fu against Selby. Where's your money?
Marco Fu has been a surprise package so far. You know, he's played Ronnie and he's played Sean Murphy, the two players that have really dominated over the years, and he's played them and got points. I think that could well be a draw, that game, and that would suit Marco.
Okay, and world champion against 2 times world champion. Is that going to be a draw?
Yes.
I'll let you get back to that fence, Neil. Right, time to meet the players, as always, introduced by our brilliant MC, Mr. John McDonald. First up, it's Marco Fu.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome. We are live at the Leisure Centre here in Inverness, Scotland. It's the partycasino.com Premier League Snooker, brought to you by Matchroom Sport. We're live and exclusive here on Sky Sports HD. Now time to meet our players. We have a 25-second shot clock. The referee in charge of the action is Mr. Paul Collier. Time now to meet the former Premier League champion from Happy Valley, Hong Kong. It's Marco Fu!
Good to see you, Marco Fu. I'm guessing a happy Marco Fu, because as things currently stand, we just saw them moments ago, in the top 4 of the Premier League and still unbeaten.
Yeah, it's a good start for me, but I mean, all the matches are tough. I mean, it's still early days here, so anything can happen from now on. So yeah, but I've got a good start, so I'm coming into this match with a little bit more relaxed than expected, so that's a good thing.
And a win tonight will put you top of the league table, and more importantly, I suppose, give you double the amount of points you totaled for the entire Premier League last season.
Yeah, it's going to be my target tonight. Hopefully I can beat Mark, but it's not going to be easy because Mark is a classy player, so yeah, it's going to be tough, but I'm looking forward to the challenge.
I think the last time you played in the Premier League, your first 2 matches you lost, they were both tough games. I think you had the Rocket, Ronnie O'Sullivan, and also the world champion as well, and you lost both of those. This time completely different. How important is getting a good start in the Premier League?
Yeah, of course it's very important because like with the format, with the players, everybody's such great players. I mean, it's great to have a good start, and yeah, because it just makes you a little bit more relaxed going into the other matches, I think.
And very briefly, your opponent tonight, Mark Selby, Masters champion, desperate for a win as well. It's going to be tough, isn't it?
Yeah, he'll do everything to win, I'm sure, because I've played Mark many times and we seem to have quite many good games, but I seem to struggle a little bit against Mark, so hopefully that will change tonight.
Best of luck. Marco Fu, everyone. Thank you, Marco. And Marco's opponent is the Masters champion.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to meet the reigning Masters champion, the jester from Leicester, Mark Selby!
Hey, let me ask you, Masters champion, as things currently stand, you're second from bottom. I think you've been playing very well in the Premier League, but just the results haven't been going your way. Do you think, from your point of view, it's unfair you're that low down? Has it surprised you, the results, bearing in mind you're not playing badly?
A little bit. Like you says, I mean, I sort of agree with you. I think I have been playing better than obviously what the results shown, but like I've always said, I think this year is probably the toughest the Premier League's been, so obviously you got to expect it as well. Everybody else you're playing against is class opposition.
Do you think that is the difference? Because you didn't play in the Premier League last year, but you did the year before. You didn't lose a league game at all. In fact, the only time you got beat was in the final against Ronnie. Do you think that's been the difference then?
I don't think so, no, because I mean this year we've had a lot more tournaments, so coming into the Premier League we've been a lot more sharper than what we was 2 years ago when we didn't have as many tournaments. Like I say, I just think the standard's so good at the moment.
I think it's fair to say, and no disrespect to Marco, but before this season's Premier League, on paper, this for you looked the easiest game. But Marco has produced completely different snooker than we expected. And tonight, now it's a really tough game for you, Mark, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, like I say, I looked at the Premier League and every game was going to be hard. I mean, Marco's won this tournament before, so he shows what a class act he is. And I'm sure, obviously, tonight's going to be a tough game as well.
And briefly, I spoke to Neil Folds at the top of the show. We were saying just how tight the Premier League is. A win for you tonight puts you top.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Everybody seems to be beating each other at the moment, so obviously I've only won one and lost two, so I'm not too disappointed. Would have been nice to obviously not lost as yet, but like you say, if I win tonight, and then I'll put myself back in the pot.
And finally, you were on the 147 last week. I think you missed the 13th red. Unlucky for some. Fancy it tonight? You going to go for it?
Well, I mean, we'll see. I fell over last week when I was on the 147. I mean, I was thinking of the money. So hopefully this week, if I get a chance, I may go a bit further.
Best of luck. Mark Selby, everyone. Thank you, Mark. I think we're going to see a 147 tonight. Neil Folds, Phil Yates, what do you reckon?
Well, there's always a chance, especially with the quality of the opposition, the quality of the attractions here in Inverness this evening.
The first frame, Marco Fu to break.
A former Premier League champion breaks off against the Masters champion. Later on, it's a meeting of two world champions, I should say. Quality all the way.
It's a very nice pot to start with. I watched Mark practicing just this shot actually into both corner pockets before play started. Didn't miss any of those. It's nice when you put the practice into the match table. So green to the middle, and he's already in with a chance here. Very early days, but I think better than knocking in your first shot of a match.
Well, you can't draw a great deal of comparisons between Mark Selby and Ronnie O'Sullivan, apart from the fact they're regular tournament winners, but I always find that if their potting from distance is working, they're more than a handful. And over the years, it has to be said, Selby has proved more than a handful for Marco Fu in their head-to-head meetings.
12.
They've played on 5 previous occasions, and Selby has won all 5. A couple of times on Chinese soil.
13.
2008 China Open, and that year's Shanghai Masters as well. The most recent meeting, 4-2 Selby prevailed in the semi-final of the Players Tour Championship, event number 2, and he went on to win that tournament.
I think Marco made reference to that at the start of the match, that he struggled against the style of play
18.
that Mark Selby can produce, which he can graft if he has to. He likes to play attackingly,
19.
and he's a heavy scorer, but he's got a B game which can get him over the line in more of a grinding fashion. This is a tough shot though, which he's got to take on. Not sure where the cue ball will finish, but the pot itself can be missed. Well, it's a very nice pot. I'm just looking to see if he's on the next ball.
26.
He might go with just a touch of side perhaps to make this red potable.
27.
Yes, you're quite right, Neil. Selby is renowned as a grinder, but he can be very fluent. Rather like Graham Dott in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course he played in the Premier League 2 seasons ago, and players thought, well, he's not going to quite be the same force in a quicker
34.
format, but he reached the final and played some great snooker a couple of seasons back.
Well, we were actually talking to him
35.
at one event, Selby, and he said that being involved in the Premier League, and more importantly, having to play with a 25-second shot clock, had actually done him a favour. It had made him realise that he can get on with it, and his game doesn't suffer as a result.
I think that's right. I think players have their mind made up sometimes by this way of playing.
41.
You know, they've got to get on with it. Doesn't give them enough time to think of things that can go wrong. But this is a very confident start.
42.
It was a tremendous opening red, and within a few shots he's got the red spread far and wide.
Both yourself and Andy, Neil, were making the point that this is the best ever Premier League
49.
in terms of standard from players 1 to 7.
50.
Undoubtedly that is the case, and I think it's borne out in the number of century breaks we've seen so far. 12, and this is only the start of match night number 5.
And that's not worked out perfectly,
57.
that cannon, but he's still got a choice of reds. Such was the large area he played in with the cue ball. And the other thing to say is, not only has he dominated matches with Marco, he's been beaten by him at all yet, so you know that whatever you say, although this is a new match, I think previous matches do come into play when one player's been so dominant.
65.
There you see the difference, 65. Of course the remaining will go down by 8 points once this red is in, so a red and a colour required, that's all. So a highly
66.
promising start.
The break 66, it's taken only 5 minutes to compile. Supporting the theory that when he wants to, he can get on with it.
I think in this day and age,
72.
most players, when the balls are there, don't really hang around too much. 1 or 2 exceptions, but not many.
73.
Can make 139 here with blacks with these 4 reds. You might have the angle actually to get on a black from this, but
80.
whichever way you look at it, the next option or next target will be that century.
81.
It's been a lucrative exercise so far for Mark
86.
Selby, this Premier League. Already £11,000 chalked up. It's going to be 12 after this frame, and it could well be 13.
87.
I think the red next to the pink pots
89.
to most pockets as well. Certainly it'll pot into the bottom left if he's behind it.
90.
Bit straight on this.
Yes, trying to just
Mark Selby, 90
pinch the
on the
pocket,
frame.
make an angle. He missed the black, but what a start. In fact, on the shores of Loch Ness, a monster start by Mark Selby. He leads 1-0.
Second frame. Mark Selby to break.
Yeah, the best possible start really for Mark Selby. You've got to be on your guard, haven't you, in this game and in the league. Just the break-off shot, your first shot of a match has got to be absolutely perfect, or you sit out a 90 break. Well, he's got the chance here to pay Mark Selby back, because Mark Selby's break was slightly weak. Probably a similar shot from the other side of the table, actually. Only thing is, he hasn't finished ideally on this colour. He's a bit close to the side cushion with this.
Marco Thu, one of those players that
6.
when he's struggling, you think anyone could beat him, but when he's playing well, just doesn't seem to miss.
Yeah, I mean, he's got an excellent record against the likes of Ronnie O'Sullivan over the years. One of the few players who's almost level pegging in matches, which I think highlights the point you're making, that
7.
on his day really is a very special player. But he is a bit streaky, you know. He's one of these players, his form can be patchy.
I've always maintained that the player with the greatest difference between his best and his worst, Tony Drago, undoubtedly. But I think
11.
Thu is up there. At peak form, he can destroy anyone.
Don't forget the reason he's here
12.
is because he won the Championship League, which is a series of matches over many months in all kinds of weather in Essex, played in front of no spectators to find one player, and believe me, that is extremely tough to win.
Yes, the Championship League at Crondon Park Golf Club. And Neil's right. Boy, do they
19.
have some weather there. The road into the clubhouse, more like the Cresta Run.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's got to win that, but my word, that is a
20.
tough way to make an entry back into the Premier League, which Marco was looking for after a pretty disappointing performance in it last year. But, you know, you could argue that he's played the two most dangerous players in the league. He's played the two guys so far this year and got points against both of them
27.
that have won the league. He played Ronnie and got a point, and he played Sean Murphy, the current champion, and got both points with a 4-2 win.
28.
So he's played the tough games, so he is sitting pretty.
Could not agree more. If he were to win this evening, tall order, we know now he's 1-0 down, but if he does, 5 points from 3 matches, pretty much 1 foot and several toes in the semi-finals.
Played it nicely, needs a bit of luck. Well, he's got the backup red, which has gone close to a pocket. So I think he deserved it, because this was a good contact on the tee.
33.
He'll be perfectly happy with that kiss, the way
34.
it works out, because his cue ball's a little bit on the run there. To hit the black and finish on the pink is not so bad. Well, that's the red now that he'd like to pot if it will go, because of course
40.
it will open up the black, and it was the red that may have caused him a problem. It does pot, which is good news for Marco.
$41.
Well, another point to make, Neil. One has to say the table looks to be running beautifully again, and these Premier League matches, by their very definition, are one-night stands. Sometimes it's difficult for the table fitters to get great conditions immediately, but they seem to do it week in, week out.
Yeah, I agree. This table seems to be playing very nicely.
46.
Just a bit stretching on this. He's got to be a little careful with this pot. Not entirely comfortable at the table, I'd say.
47.
Next thread, probably the one sticking out on the right of the table. The others are a bit tied up. He's played in behind that one to keep the break going, but he will need one of the reds in the cluster. A little pack of 6 reds. One sticks out on the left, but to win the frame here, he's got to do something a little bit tricky. It's all about getting top-sided. That's a really good shot. Something you take for granted, but he junked it to perfection. And he's noticed that red he can get on, the one that sticks out on the left. And if he can get a black with it, well, the frame is his. This is a tremendous comeback from Marco, once again from the break-off shot. Red and the black will seal the frame, barring snookers. Might not be able to play on the black though.
61.
Does he really want to play the pink up the table? Here's a shot again. Played it well. He's got a choice here. Does he really want to take the pink, screw it in and play on the reds? Because that becomes quite a dangerous shot. He plays it to the centre, then he's got to come all around the table. Well, that's very, very well done. That was the kind of shot that could lose you the frame, despite the lead.
67.
Yes, exactly what I was thinking. He was 61 points ahead, but really it was all about that shot.
Well, he threw his head up there, annoyed with the positional side, but he'd be delighted with the scores. He'd like to make a century. It might be difficult now. This is not easy. He's looking very good in the frame, though. Nowhere near.
Marco threw 68.
Should have done enough. Selby needs 3 snookers. He'll be thinking 1 snooker and a free ball.
Yeah, I can understand him playing on.
1.
There's still some sort of a chance. He might take the 2 reds, high colours in the middle of the table, and play on a snooker on the other red. One that's nearest the bottom cushion. But this is a tall order from here.
8. 9.
Well, if you've got a good memory, apologies in advance for repetition, but in the first major ranking event
16
of this season, the Shanghai Masters in the quarterfinals, Selby won an extraordinary frame against Mark King
17
and went on to win the match after requiring multiple snookers on the colours. And when you've done that quite recently, it puts the sort of germ of thought in your mind that you can do it again.
Yeah, I mean, you never know unless you try whether you can do this. You do see players that give up with a couple of
24
snookers required, who don't really fancy the job, want to get on with the next frame. But to win a frame of this kind is a great feeling, and an awful feeling if you're on the receiving end of it. Well, there's the snooker.
and 24.
This might not be that easy to hit. And the other factor, the brown is close to the red, so he may leave a free ball. The frame is not dead yet.
Yes, good point, Neil. The brown going close to the red, that was a real bonus for him.
Timeout.
This has got to be a timeout. This is a very difficult snooker to hit. I was just trying to put up a shot on the telestrator, but I don't know if the shot I'm looking at is actually on, because the brown is just covering it from anything. The cue ball coming over from the right of the table, the brown seems to cover. Well, there is possibly an angle. Again, you can see it comes quite close to the blue. That's in the way, really. That might be a way. It's a horrible shot, because if he goes past that red, then he's going to leave a free ball. So this really is not nice.
We have to bear in mind, if he were to fail to make contact with the red, a miss wouldn't be called, and so the cardinal sin for Fu here would be to take the cue ball too far and leave the path to the red obscured by the brown, i.e. a free ball.
Well, he might be trying to go off one cushion, but he's got to avoid the yellow. This really is not nice. Sometimes one cushion escapes are more difficult than two. It's not a nice shot at all to be left with the brown there. If he goes this way, he's got to make sure he doesn't go into the yellow. That is a terrific shot. That's a much better shot than it looks. However, he's probably going to be in another snooker in a few seconds' time. Well, this one couldn't possibly be as difficult as that last one. Doesn't mean he won't miss it, but it's a very good shot he just escaped from there a minute ago. This is one cushion as well. No great problems.
And a semi-Chinese snooker over the black limits Selby's options with this one.
I'll be happy with that one. Looks like he's got a snooker back.
And now it should be level pegging. Selby will not return to the table after that.
Six. Eight.
A very confident shot there played by Marco. He'd be pleased to have pulled back so quickly. I think both players have got to brush up on their break-off shot by the looks of things, because
11.
That's what's given their opponent a chance straight away. It's meant to be an advantage to break off. If you win the toss, invariably a player will break.
15.
Get an early advantage, but it's not worked out like that here.
$20. 26.
Not quite as emphatic as the first frame, but a 68 break, more than enough. to get us back onto level terms. That's because frame 2 has gone to Fu.
Frame 3, Marco Fu to break.
Well, Marco's break-off shot in frame 1 didn't really work out. This time, that's more solid. Cue ball back to the baulk cushion. No one particularly likes playing shots from there.
So far, Neil, some of these statistics make very impressive reading.
They do indeed. Now, we've only played 2 frames, but that's how well these two have played. 97% pot success, and you noted that the long pots have been going in, especially from the break-off shot, Phil, as well, and the long pot success is always a lot lower than that. It's considerably higher today. We'll show you that in a minute, the long pots, which have been flying in. What about that? Take a picture of that. Might not last.
Well, if the cue ball is far enough away from the red, is this a chance maybe? Well, he's looking at one to the middle, I think. Natural angle for position. But didn't really threaten the pocket.
No, he didn't play it very confidently, did he? He kind of felt as if he would miss this, just in his body language on the shot. He's way off.
Well, the only positive about those last 2 shots is that they won't affect their 100% pot success rate from distance, because they were both short.
A surprising miss there from Mark. It was what I thought he would get. Now what's going to happen here? It's not quite a re-rack scenario, but I don't think that there's all that many options here for Mark Selby. Well, this is all about eye contact from one player to the other, and Mark might look over at Marco, and well, playing that shot I don't think we're going to see necessarily a re-rack, because he's tried to do something different. I don't think Mark can do much with this. Again, it's just a little drop into the reds. Just sometimes get a situation where there was enough reds out in the open that a player just can't take a risk with a safety in case they leave it on.
Foul.
Well, he must have hit
Mark
something with his
Selby.
cue there. Not sure whether Marco was aware of it, but it did sound like there was a little clang of maybe the ferrule hitting a ball. What's happened here? Let's have a look. Yeah, that's the cue hitting the red, and Paul Collier didn't miss it.
Smashing camera shot, that. And a smashing snooker shot, that.
1.
You know, normally in mid-October, there's a case to say that players are still suffering from a little bit of early season rust. Not the case with Mark Selby. He's been heavily involved in a variety of tournaments so far this season, and by my reckoning, this is his 38th match in professional competition. Obviously, the Players Tour Championship events have given him lots of match practice, and you can just see it in his game.
7.
Yes, it almost takes you back to as it was in the mid-80s, perhaps, where you'd have a month of hard practice before the season started, but there were so many tournaments that you didn't really need to practice that hard between them, because you're kind of match sharp and just tick over with your game for a few hours here and there. There were so many matches, there was no need for it. But in the last 10 years, perhaps, players at this time of the year might have played one match in the top 16 if they'd got beat in the first tournament. There are one or two players actually that have not taken the chance to play in as many as they could have done. Top 16 players, not everyone's entered all these slightly minor ranking events.
Selby loves snooker though, and he supported them all, and it's good to see.
Touching ball.
Yeah, the other thing I remember about Mark Selby is, of course, he won the 8-ball pool world championship during the summer when there was no snooker on, just so he could play.
Yes, that was the 8-ball pool version on the smaller tables. Obviously, they play 8-ball on the bigger tables around the world, which is more of an international game, but it was still a cracking achievement for Selby, that.
$26. $27.
I love my pool, as you know, Neil, and I've enjoyed commentating on tournaments around the world, but I have to say this, it's a statement of fact. You get snooker players who turn their hand to pool and become reasonably good, not the other way around.
Well, I think shots like we've just seen there are all about technique, aren't they? And I think that comes into the equation. The snooker players do have a better technique, don't get me wrong. Some very fine 8-ball pool players around, but it is a smaller table, as simple as that. It's a lovely shot to go into those reds around 2 cushions. That wasn't such a good shot. He's on a red, but I don't think that cannon worked out.
40.
This is the kind of shot where he might consider a timeout unless it's straightforward. I think a timeout might loom here.
Timeout.
Because it's not so much the red, it's all a question of where he's going to finish with the cue ball from it. He may take on a thin red also to take him up and down the table. The red that he's taken on is much more difficult than the one he's close to, but the one to the right corner that he was close to leaves him no chance of getting on the colour.
Yes, and only the first of these 5 permitted timeouts. No point in wasting them.
Well, it was certainly worth the wait, and the spectators here in Inverness enjoyed that shot because it was very well controlled.
Yes, Inverness, the capital of the Scottish Highlands, and what a beautiful place.
46.
Drove up here today, and the scenery is just magnificent in this part of the world.
47.
not too far from the site of the Battle of Culloden here.
52.
Of course, Inverness was the location of Macbeth's castle in the Shakespeare play, I suppose we could say. To be or not to be, a century.
$53. $58. $59.
Well, the century is going to be made difficult by that red because it's covering the other one, and of course that's not potable either, so he'll have to do some damage there. He might just want to win the frame first of all, but that'll be the red. And the frame is not even won yet. Only one snooker
64.
required, which we saw in the last frame is not insurmountable. Nice position to be in all the same.
Yes, he made a wafer-thin contact with this red, didn't he, on the way down, so you just wonder where he would have been with the cue ball had he not made that contact in the first place, even further towards the bulk line.
Yeah, he probably didn't want to use a timeout there actually, and in this position he probably feels he wasted one, but couldn't do anything about it. I think he probably just forgot himself for a second.
Mark Selby, 64.
Well, he only just made that, and I wanted to give 4 points away there for no apparent reason. I think laughing and joking, it looks like that might be the frame sealer if this red pots.
He does that a lot, Mark. He's got a really good humour. Has a laugh and a joke around the table. When he needs to be, he can be as deadly serious as the next man.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't affect his concentration, does it? I think sometimes it actually adds a bit to it, to his game around the table.
He was the great joker, wasn't he, Fred Davis? Smiling and
7.
telling jokes, but when he needed to pop the balls, when he needed to tie his opponent up, he was all business.
8. $15. $16.
Next Thursday, Mark Selby's down in London, announcing, along with Barry Hearn, a brand new tournament for the snooker circuit, so watch this space.
$23. 24.
Well, the break will probably end here, but standard
30.
remains very high.
30 and the frame, Mark Selby.
Yes, very enjoyable to watch. Mark Selby led 1-0. He's regained the advantage at 2-1.
Frame 4, Mark Selby to break.
As the weeks progress, Neil, in the Premier League, it's normally the case that the situation becomes clearer and clearer. Well, this year's tournament it seems to become more and more complex.
Another great pot from the break-off shot. Yeah, there's usually someone that's really struggling actually in the early matches and can't get a match under his belt. A player who hasn't done anything yet is Neil Robertson, but of course he's only played that one match, so he has many games in hand. Because last year Marco Fu struggled earlier. There's a long pot success which is still at 100% each.
5.
Which is a remarkable stat. We're into frame 4.
Six.
There's the pot success still in the high 90s, 94 each. It's been a good standard.
$13. 14.
Thu has enjoyed his share of success here in Scotland. Won the 2007 Grand Prix in Aberdeen, and also 10 years ago now in the old Regal Scottish Masters
21.
in Motherwell. He made a 147 break. The first ever
22
on the internet.
Choice of shots here, could blunder right up the table or try and crash into the pack. He's missed the pot. Well, he played a little cannon there. That's what you call a bit of divided concentration, thinking more about the positional side than the pot, which of course if he would have been concentrating on he wouldn't have missed. He played the cannon, which he got, which is always the way when the other part of the shot goes wrong. A little shake of the head is about as much as you're going to get from Marco, but he'll be pretty upset with that.
One.
Yeah, he had to put in a quick stride or two there to beat the clock. He gets a clap for that shot, but he lost the cue ball, unfortunately. People just
8.
ending up on the cushion. He does take a run, and it's very difficult. I think we'll be looking at the safety shot. I think the safety shot is with the cue ball back down towards this end, the black end.
Mark Selby 8.
I was talking about Selby playing a lot of matches so far this season. Exactly the same thing applies to Marco Fu.
Time out.
Fu deciding to employ his second timeout of the match. Yes, those players to championship events got to the semi-final of the first one and the second, quarterfinals of the fourth, and the quarterfinals of the 5th Players Tour Championship event as well, so he's played an awful lot of snooker.
There's no easy safety shot here. Problem is, with the cue ball being so close to the cushion, he can't get any screw on this to land the cue ball back there. That's the problem. It's a well-weighted safety shot from Mark. Not bad. Possible red to the left centre, but far from easy.
Time out. One left this frame.
You heard Paul Collier say one left this frame. He's got 2 left in the match, but he can only play any 3 in one frame.
Now Selby's just querying that.
Yeah, I think that Mark might have a point. I don't think he played a timeout previous to this frame.
No, I think Paul Collier might be getting confused because, of course, Fu took one.
Doesn't get much wrong, you know, Paul Collier. He just might have got that one slightly wrong. Just a minor point.
No, he's a very good referee, Paul Collier. And you can't overstate just how much concentration you need to referee at top level, even without a shot clock.
Just a bit of a lull after some very good frames.
Timeout.
Well, these timeouts are rattling through. There's a lot of snooker to be played in this match yet. Both players have used 3. Of course, you've got 5 in the match. I always wonder what will happen if you get a last frame decider when both players have run out, because it can possibly be a bit like the Keystone Cops around the table.
Now remember, both players have an unblemished record when it comes to potting from distance. Will Selby retain his right here?
One.
Yeah, so Fu missed a long one.
8.
His
Touching ball.
100% record has been exploded, but Selby's remains intact.
Yeah, but that positional shot has gone slightly wrong. Now, there's the cueing he's got over a couple of reds and the pink, which makes this a difficult shot, and doesn't really want to use any more timeouts. I think he might have to. Got to be quick here.
Time out.
He's used 4.
One left this frame. One left in total.
Well, there you go. It could be a few twists in the tail in this match, you know, with players being pressed for time.
I think he made the right decision there, though, ultimately, because had he just
Mark Selby, 8.
thrown the cue at the ball, he could well have cost himself the frame. It was a very awkward situation.
Well, he's played a holding safety shot, but I tell you what, that could not have been played any worse. He's played a shot that is fairly regulation. He's hit the wrong side of the red from the cushion. He's left him straight back in.
Yes, had to err on the side of being narrow there as opposed to wide.
Mark just short of position. Cue ball travelling around the table. Through bolt. Brown away from its spot certainly helps. That's a decent shot.
6. 7. 14. 15.
You were mentioning, Neil, that in 2006 Mark Selby won the World 8-Ball Pool Championship in the summer. Well, this summer, over in Bangkok, Thailand, he won the World 6 Reds Championship, and I say that because right now 6 Reds are on the table.
He should be right then here, shouldn't he?
$23.
Yeah, it was an awkward positional shot. All we could do is play on that red,
30.
I think, that he's on.
$31.
Oh, the top red pots to the left corner, that's crucial.
38. 39.
Cued that very well, reminiscent of that great 80s power merchant Neil Foulds.
46.
Yeah, too kind. Played it with good control. Red and anything but a yellow for a colour will be enough.
47.
No one screwed back more effortlessly than my co-commentator this evening. The only one I could do it was with a small white or a light one. Well, 47 ahead, 43 on the table. Fu needs a snooker. It looks very much as though Selby, at the very least, is going to leave Inverness with 1 point in the bag.
Mark Selby, 53.
Third successive frame, Neil, where a player has gone well in front but not quite far enough in front for his opponent to concede. It's still well worth Fu's while to battle away. Well, no real benefit there for Fu to go for the red he could have potted, because he couldn't hold position on the black, and if he doesn't pot 2 reds and 2 blacks with the 2 reds, he'll need 2 snookers, not 1.
Check that the black will pot from there, and it will. It was a nice pot. May just decide to pot another red and a black from here and get the snooker later on. You've got that green and blue so close together, big target there for getting a snooker in behind. So again, you've got a player wanting one snooker, but still in with a reasonable chance, certainly, of getting a snooker and maybe going on to win the frame. Sometimes you look at the table and you say, well, no chance. But it's quite appealing if you're trying to get snookers.
Yes, the conventional wisdom is that you should try and leave as many balls on the table as possible,
16.
but not when 2 balls, i.e. green and blue, are like this, because it's almost guaranteed.
Yes, I mean, you could pot this and just get the snooker in behind the blue from the green. Well, I think he's going to go. And you know, it's all about getting a good one here. I mean, he's certain to get the snooker, just got to play a stun shot. Could use the green going next to a high colour, either pink or black. That'd be making it very difficult to hit. So he's disappointed. I can see by the look on his face that while he's got the snooker, he wanted the green to go somewhere close to a high colour. That's why he's shaking his head.
A few times tonight he seemed uncharacteristically agitated.
Well, another chance to get a snooker here from this shot. Well, I think there's a little bit of the green sticking out here, more than a bit.
Minutes this frame has been in progress, by some distance the lengthiest of the match so far. Could be useful.
Here's a snooker, Phil. He should hit this one cushion without too many problems. Cue ball just before the jaw of the middle pocket. Shouldn't be an issue, this. Don't know whether Marco will try and pot the green or not. His plans are difficult to see him getting a snooker from here anyway. Well, he tried to.
Yes, if Fu could pot green and brown, it would mean he would need a snooker on blue, pink or black to win the frame, as it is at the moment. If he gets a 4-point penalty snooker on green or brown and then pots the 5 colours, he can only force a respotted black.
This is what can happen, Phil, isn't it? And when a player just can't quite kill the frame off in one visit, other players are somewhat obliged to try and get the snookers, or try and get them. But the table is not looking so good as it was for Marco a few shots ago. And if this green goes in, I'm sure Mark's playing it, that will just about seal the frame.
That 100% record from distance for Mark Selby in this match has gone. We saw there on the graphic, fast approaching 23 minutes this frame, and for the Premier League that's bordering on a marathon. Fancy him to wrap things up with this.
Mark Selby, 3 and the frame.
Well, Mark Selby leads 3-1, and what that means is that Marco Fu needs the closing 2 frames to defend his unbeaten record in this year's Premier League. And this is as it stands at the moment, the league table. Mark Selby has guaranteed himself at least 1 point, and so if he were to win one of the remaining 2 frames here this evening, obviously claim the victory, he would join Ding Junhui on 4 points, but he would have won at least 1 more frame, and so therefore Selby would go to the top of the table. And you see from that, although he's only played 1 match, it's vitally important for Robertson to gain something in our second match this evening against Mark Williams.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see him play again, because he's never quite mastered this format, as Neil, the man in shot, Marco could do with winning a couple of frames tonight, if he could, to keep his good record. I thought he pinched the match a couple of weeks ago against Sean Murphy when he won 4-2. He won a pretty dramatic final frame of that match to get the points, but he trailed 3-1 here.
Yes, he was 3-2 up in his
Thank you,
opening
ladies and
match
gents,
against
for taking
Ronnie
seats,
O'Sullivan.
please.
Fu.
Frame 5, Marco Fu to
O'Sullivan
break.
won frame 6 with a century break, and as you say, Neil, it could easily have been a draw, second time out as well. If my memory serves me correct, Murphy was in the balls, missed a pink. He should have potted.
Yeah, all these smaller issues all tot up, don't they? Matches you should win as you travel around the UK, playing in the Premier League. Nice kiss, but I think he deserved it. Nice pot. Helps an awful lot when you do get a kiss like that, pushing the brown into an easy position.
Selby's tournament so far, 3 matches, 3 4-2s opened up at the Plymouth Pavilions, losing 4-2 to Mark Williams. That after winning the opening 2 frames very impressively indeed. Then he beat Neil Robertson 4-2 in Preston. Last week down in Brentwood in Essex, lost 4-2 to Ding Chunwei. And Neil, here's another indication of just how tight this year's event has been. This is match number 10. We've only seen one result other than 4-2 or 3-3.
I think maybe it's taken some players a bit longer to get used to the shot clock than Ronnie, who seemed to take to it the very first time we saw him. Had 6 Premier Leagues. Ronnie won the first 5 under the shot clock. The Premier League's been going for years, but it kind of was a bit thought-provoking for some, but not for O'Sullivan. It seems they're just catching up a bit now, though. Eventually players have got better under this format. It doesn't play a part in every shot, it just that some shots are just, you don't see them that quickly as a player.
Adding pre and current shot clock together, the tournament's been in operation since 1987.
Well, he deserves to be on one because it was a good split. He's on one very close to the left corner. There it is. It didn't do much wrong there. It didn't split quite as well as they should have done from that contact.
Yeah, so the Premier League, introduced in 1987, we've only seen 8 players lift the trophy in that time. Of the 23 previous tournaments contested, Steve Davis, Stephen Hendry and Ronnie O'Sullivan have combined to win 18 of them. Ken Doherty was a twice winner.
28.
And single tournament victories in the Premier League have gone to Jimmy White, John Higgins, Sean Murphy, of course, last season, and in 2003, Marco Fu.
$29. $36. 37.
38.
Well, again, it was a good split. There may be a red that goes to the middle
44.
pocket. The one threaded through the others there. It will just go.
45.
Now, this might be a little premature, Neil, but for me, this is one of the best individual performances we've seen in the competition this year.
Yeah, we had a slightly slow end to the previous frame, but other than that, it's been a high-quality match.
52.
I think Marco has done an awful lot wrong, but he's looking down the barrel here with his first defeat. The standard has been high.
Yes, if you're just joining us, Selby won the first, direct from Thu's break-off,
53.
with a 90 break. He made 64 in the third, 53 in the fourth, and now another half-century.
Yeah, and this is another good chance to make it into a century.
58.
Had chances previously in this match, but this is another
59.
one. At the moment, of course, trying to secure the frame and match with his visits at the top of his list of priorities. And he needs one more red.
$66. $67.
Well, I don't think we're going to see much messing around for snookers in this frame.
74.
Or considering the lock we're next to, messing around.
75.
You've been saving that one all day, haven't you? On your long drive up here, you thought of quite a few, Phil, I reckon. Not around the corner from your place, is it, this?
Listen, on the drive up I could have written
83.
War and Peace, and then a sequel.
$83. $90. $91.
This little screw shot back in behind that red along the cushion. Well, that's what we call a blind
96.
pocket, this. From where he's queuing up from, he just can't see the opening of the pocket very well. That doesn't mean he'll miss it, but there is a possibility of him missing this. Well, it wiped his feet, as they say. £104,000 added to the Selby bank balance for that century break.
106.
Yes, the 13th of the tournament so far, and Selby joins Ronnie O'Sullivan with 4 each.
109.
The highest break so far, 124 from Sean Murphy. That was in the very first match
113.
on the 2nd of September at Southampton during his 5-1 win over Deng Chunwei.
118. 124. 131 in the frame, Mark Selby.
Could not be more convincing. Mark Selby has played beautifully here tonight. 2 points under lock and key. mouth-watering prospect, that. And the league is a mouth-watering prospect for Mark Selby. He's just gone top. But you know, it's so tight in this year's competition. It could come down to frames won, and that's why he will not take his foot off the pedal here.
He's a long way off from that. He's pretty lucky to get the double kiss, actually.
Well, if previous evidence is anything to go by, this one will be deposited without any fuss.
As I mentioned at the start of the match, this was the kind of shot he was practicing for quite a while before play started on this table. And, well, practice clearly makes perfect, because he's knocked all those in.
8.
Well, last week at Brentwood, in the closing frame against Ding Chun-wei, Selby
9.
potted 13 reds, 12 blacks before missing the 13th black. On that occasion he was 4-1 down. This time he's 4-1 up. And there's 2 reds, 2 blacks, and the possibility of several more to come.
Yeah, and I think, you know,
16.
a player in this situation with the match won and the ball's in prime position will have it in the back of his mind that there is a possibility. I know that Ronnie O'Sullivan, I think when he got to 16, he asked Jan Verhaest, didn't he, in the World Open about the break prize, and we kind of just about all know what happened after that. I think if you were playing
17.
Ronnie that day, you might have thought that was a bit audacious to be asking the referee after 16 whether there's a 147 on, but Ronnie doesn't really count, does he, as being normal in that respect. It's incredible.
In the World Amateur Championship some years back, just before he entered the paid ranks, O'Sullivan was a
24.
precocious teenager, and there was a gold bracelet on offer for the highest break every day. He was playing a German who wasn't very good at all, not
25.
in his class, Ronnie, and when he realised this particular frame had gone scrappy and he couldn't make the highest break of the day, he just gave the frame to this German fellow, even though he was well in front, and said, let's rack them up again, I want to win another bracelet. That didn't go down too well either. And while we're talking, Mark Selby has spotted a blue, so the 147 isn't a possibility.
Well, it's not going to happen, but it might be a pretty resounding win. And he has played well
31.
tonight, there's no doubt about that.
$38. 39.
As we said at the start of the match, Selby, unblemished record against Marco Fu. 5 wins out of 5 it was before a ball was struck. It's going to be 6 out of 6 now. Just wondering, Neil, either way, did you ever play
44.
someone who you always beat or conversely always lost against?
Well, on the losing side, you could throw in
45.
pretty left field selections here. Steve Davis and Stephen Hendry I used to struggle against, but I don't think I was alone in that one. Well, those two have damaged a few careers over the years.
But you're quite right, of course, if someone's won all
52.
4 or 5 or whatever particular meetings between two players, it's bound to have some kind of psychological effect.
53.
Absolutely, it's made something of a difference here. That was actually quite a poor shot from Mark. I don't think it was the pace which he misjudged, it was the the kind of cannon that he was going to get. I think he came off a little thinner than he thought from the side of the Reds. Nice recovery shot. And he's going to take another good shot here to keep the break alive.
60.
Probably going to be the red that he just cannoned into the top right hand pocket. Don't see much else on.
Could well be stunning across the table for the pink to the right hand top pocket, or even the black.
61.
It really does look, Neil, as though it's going to be 5-1.
Yeah, it was a great shot, Phil, because if he had missed it, look, he would have left nothing. So it was a clever shot, and he's grown in confidence. He's played well all night, actually.
Yes, the stun shot for the pink was the easier
68.
positional shot, but of course that would have left Reds, and so Selby's choice, spot on.
69.
Well, 4-1 in frames, looking like 5-1, but that's also a good reflection of how Mark has played. Pot success, 93%. We're in the 6th frame, and that is high.
76.
You occasionally see higher, but you'd settle for that in most matches.
77. $84. 85.
Well, it's a lengthy journey north to Inverness, but for Mark Selby, well worthwhile. Certain to be a £6,000 payday this evening. If he makes a century here, make that 7,000, and he goes to the top of the table.
Mark Selby, 90.
No century, but mission accomplished, and with considerable style. 90, 64, 53, 131 and 90 to finish. Selby beats Marco Fu 5-1.
Selby started the evening, I think, 1 place from bottom. I think started 6th position. Mark Williams there now top of the Premier League. Played for, he's got 2 games left, but at the moment you can't get better than top spot. And I think thoroughly deserved as well, Mark, because for my money, and we're listening to the boys in the commentary box as well, the best performance so far this season in the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm over the moon with the way I played. I mean, obviously I wanted the win at the start of the match, but to play like that as well and get the win is obviously a great bonus. But I've been playing like that in patches from the start of the season, really. It's just that everybody else seems to be playing exactly the same, or if not better than me. You
started the match really well, you got a 90 break, then you sat down in your seat and Marco came to the table and did exactly to you what you did to him in the frame before. Do you think, oh, this is happening again?
Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. I mean, I kicked off well and then Marco responded, obviously come to the table cold and more or less done exactly the same as what I did, but I suppose that's what you got to expect. I mean, if I'm doing it, obviously I've got to expect my opponent to do it as well.
It was one of the frames, I think the second one, which Marco won, where you needed snookers. He nearly got them as well. He produced an amazing out of snooker, if you like.
Yeah, I'll put him in a tough snooker, and if he misses it, there's a great chance he could leave me a free ball, but every credit to Mark, he'd done a great escape and obviously went on to win the frame.
You got an extra £1,000 for a ton tonight, which clinched the match as well. You missed out on 2 others. Does that bother you, or is it purely about performance?
Yeah, I'm devastated. Obviously, like, it'd be great to obviously have 2 more £1,000 in my pocket rather than in Barry Ann's pocket. I mean, it's better in mine than his.
He's got big pockets as well. Hey, let me ask you about this, because in the last frame, you'd taken 5 reds and blacks, and then you took this red here, and you'd gone up for the blue, where we were watching it in the Players' Lounge, and it would have, in theory, been possible to take the red just to the left of the black to keep you on the black for the 147. Was that in your mind at all, or was it purely just, I'm going to win the frame no matter what?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to win the frame, really. I knew that I'd already won the game, but at the end of the day, frames could count come to the end of the Premier League season. So I wasn't really thinking about the 147. I've got bad memories from last week, so I don't think I'd have made it anyway.
Let me just ask you before we let you enjoy the rest of the evening. Top of the Premier League, doesn't get better than that, but you need more points to guarantee your spot there. 2 tough games next, Sean Murphy and then the Rocket, Ronnie O'Sullivan.
Yeah, I mean, obviously happy to be at the top of the league, but like you say, I still need more points, I think. 2 tough games left, but obviously if I'd have got beat tonight, I probably wouldn't have had no chance of qualifying, so at least I've still given myself a chance.
Well, a great win and a brilliant performance. Thanks very much. Mark Selby, everyone. Thanks, Mark. Well, we're going to have a quick break, but don't go anywhere. More Premier League stars right after the break. And on with the show, time to meet the players, and first up it's the 2-time world champion.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the action where we are live at the Leisure Centre here in Inverness, Scotland. It's the partycasino.com Premier League Snooker, brought to you by Maximum Sport. We are live and exclusive here on Sky Sports HD. We have a 25-second shot clock. Referee in charge of the action is Mr. Paul Collier. It's now time to meet the players. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome the 2-time champion of the world, Mark Williams!
Good to see you, Mark Williams. As things currently stand, you're unbeaten in 5 years in the Premier League. Tonight represents your halfway house, if you like. You've played half your matches in this season's Premier League. A win we just saw will put you top. From your point of view, how important at this stage is it to be in the top 4, or is it irrelevant? It's all down to what happens on the last day of the season.
Yeah, I think it's irrelevant. I mean, I haven't played in a league for 4 or 5 years, and when I used to play in it, back then the standard and the field was never this strong. It's the strongest I've ever played in it. So I think it's going to go down to the last game or two. I mean, no matter what happens, if I win, I could go near the top. But I mean, you can see the standard yourself.
You're playing the world champion, the world #1, the world open champion. Obviously the man in form at the moment. From your point of view, do you raise your game subconsciously when you're playing the world champion? Do you feel that you've got a point to prove?
No, I don't. I mean, I just try and play Neil and beat him as if it's anybody else. I mean, it doesn't matter because he's world champion. It won't make me try any harder. But you know, I'm probably playing the most informed man at the minute. I mean, he's winning everything at the moment, so it's going to be a tough match for me. And I think I'm probably the oldest person in the competition, which is a first for me. But I'm enjoying it. How
do you rate him as a world champion? You've obviously played the best of them. In your eyes, is he a multiple winner?
Yeah, I think he's got the game. I mean, you know, he certainly hits the ball well enough, and you know, he's solid under pressure, which is, I think, is the main thing you got to have to win a lot of tournaments. And he's definitely good under pressure. And you know, he can win as many tournaments as as he enters. Really, he's that good.
Fancy a maximum tonight?
47 will be fine for me.
Best of luck, Mark Williams, everyone. Thanks, Mark. Mark's opponent is the world champion.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now it's time to meet the Q of Thunder from Down Under. He is the world #1. and the reigning champion of the world, Neil Robertson!
Mum and Dad in the audience, I see there. Hey, listen, world champ, king of the world at the moment. We joked last time we met before your Premier League game, you're bottom of the Premier League. Obviously that was a joke because you hadn't played a game. You're still bottom even though you've played, and a win tonight, you're still bottom of the Premier League.
Yeah, I know, looking at the table, I mean, I've only played one match, everyone else has played 3 or 4, so yeah, obviously, I've got a bit of catching up to do and just, trying to get some points on the board, really. I don't really want to play 2 matches for 2 losses, so yeah, it's going to be a really tough game against Mark tonight.
Tell me your views on the shot clock, because I know you're not necessarily a massive fan of it. We see you running around the table. It's possible that in theory, maybe not this season, but next season it could be brought into ranking events as well. What's your view on it?
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think my first year in the Premier League, I really struggled. I was rushing around the table a lot when I didn't really have to. This year, I don't even really think about the shot clock at all now. I'm sort of really used to it. So yeah, I wouldn't mind it sort of being brought into ranking events. I don't think you could have it 25 seconds though, maybe something like 35 probably. Okay,
talk about tonight's game. You're playing a 2-time world champion. Going to be a tough game. He's found form recently.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see. Mark was always a player I always looked up to when I was coming through and that, and yeah, it's fantastic to see him sort of back winning titles again and be back in the top 4 in the world now, rightly so. So every week in the Premier League it just gets tougher and tougher, and yeah, I'm going to have to certainly play a lot better than what I did against Selby a couple of weeks ago.
And finally, one of the main reasons I'm sure you're bottom of the league is because you've only played once, including tonight. 6 weeks left. You played 5 times. That can only help your running, can't it?
Yeah, playing every week will definitely help. I'll get better and better as the weeks get on. Obviously, we've got a really heavy schedule with so many PTC events during the weekend as well. So it's great from going from playing in a handful of tournaments to a season to 20 odd. So it's a big shock to the system really to be sort of on the move and travelling all the time, playing all the time. But it's a great problem to have.
Best of luck, Neil Robertson, everyone. Thanks, Neil. This one should be a corker. Neil folds, and first up, big bad Phil Yates.
Well, before a ball was potted here this evening, there were 3 unbeaten players in the partycasino.com Premier League of 2010. Now there's just 2 because Marco Fu has been beaten 5-1 by Mark Selby. The 2 unbeaten players, Mark Williams, the man in your picture at the moment, and Ronnie O'Sullivan.
The first frame. It's a mark in the cloth, Neil, I couldn't shift it. Neil Robertson to break.
The only thing we can forecast with any accuracy, Neil, is that a left-hander is going to do well in this one.
That's a fair point. I think Neil Robertson really could do with getting something from this match. It is early in his campaign for the year, but he has only won the odd match in 2 previous appearances. He did not very well at all last time he played in it, or the time before. He comes in as world champion with a different kind of pressure, but it seems to be the only format of the game he's never quite mastered yet. Plenty of time for that to change, I guess.
In our previous match we mentioned that Marco Fu had never beaten Mark Selby. Well, I can tell you that Mark Williams has never beaten Neil Robertson. Three matches. Robertson has won them all by an aggregate total of 14 frames for, 3 against.
I have a feeling that Mark led him 2-0 in the World Open, didn't he, and lost in the semi-finals. That was the most recent match they played.
Yes, the other 2, 5-1, 2005 Malta Cup first round to Robertson, and also a 6-0 whitewash for Robertson over Williams in the last 16 of the 2007 Masters. But Williams, a much different player now to what he was 3.5 years ago.
couple of proud Australians at the snooker tonight, enjoying themselves. Neil came down and had a word with them on his intro, which was always nice to see. I think it made their evening, actually.
Yes, they're from the southern hemisphere, and this is very much the northern hemisphere.
It's a particularly good safety shot. Cut off one side of the table. Good weight on the cue ball also. That was always going to be a dangerous shot to play with a red along that side as well. Being a left-hander, it means you can't reach across and play this red without using the rest.
Good crowd in the Inverness Leisure Centre. Will they see a good performance from Neil Robertson, already successful on Scottish soil this season, winner of the inaugural World Open at the Scottish Exhibition and Conference Centre in Glasgow. Went up there with
7.
Mixed feelings really, reservations about the best of 5 frame format. I left that tournament thinking it was one of the best I've seen for many a year.
I think there were people who suspected the draw might, the open draw and the shorter matches might mean we got unfancied players in the semi-finals, but of course we had 4 world champions at that stage, and when you think that the current world champion went on to win it, it's a lot of difference between a best of 35 frames and a best of 5 format, but eventually the best player won. So it was a success, Phil, I think.
I think one of the reasons we didn't see a great amount of shocks was that
22.
all of the matches, every single one of them was played on a televised table in front of the cameras. Quite often
23.
in tournaments you tend to see the shock results occur on what we might call the outside courts, away from the glare of the TV cameras, and therefore the lower ranked players are under less pressure and feeling more familiar surroundings.
Well, he played that slowly because he knew he could finish on one of the reds, but he hasn't exactly developed many others in the process. He may have gone into them a little firmer than that.
31.
Now this time he's using more force. He's been unfortunate there. He played that pretty well.
Generally speaking, more difficult to break the pack coming off the top cushion than going directly into them with a stun or screw shot. But Neil was absolutely right there. Unfortunate.
Doesn't have many shots here. He wouldn't want to roll into the reds, but it might just be all he can play under the circumstances.
Neil Robertson, 38.
Well, I don't think Mark will mind that because he it was an erroneous bleep there, but of course with Neil with a 38-point lead, Mark would pretty much be happy with a re-rack, which is not close to happening yet.
Phrases never issued in the history of snooker before. Erroneous bleep. Neil Folds gets the first.
Wow, thank you very much. But Mark can't do an awful lot again with this. Don't think he's going to play the same sort of a shot, but he's playing a shot with his bridge hand in the air, elbow on the table. That's a great shot. How about that? having said that, he believes it was a foul. Only he believes that, and he deserves a round of applause because he's called a foul on himself. It wasn't visible to the naked eye, Phil.
Well, did he think it was a push shot?
He must have felt the cue ball in contact for a bit too long, perhaps. And that's one that, you know, I think that you've got to give him credit for, because no one else had a clue. Understandably.
Isn't it fantastic, though, we're involved in a sport where players still own up to foul shots?
Yeah, absolutely.
Happens in golf, and it still happens in snooker.
Here's the shot again. Well, you know, I can understand Paul Collier not giving a push shot for that, because only Mark believed it.
I don't think it's cost him. In fact, in a roundabout way, he could have been the beneficiary.
He'll play the plant onto that red. I think the red further away from the pocket. He hopes not to leave that one in the way of the pocket for the pink. Oh, well, he's putted them both. Must be in a hurry. Yeah, he'd been worried here that the red that he was playing the plant onto would have stayed over the pocket. He wouldn't be able to pot this pink.
Eight. 9.
Mark Williams went through some very bleak times, personally and professionally, when his game, for want of a better description, went to pot. I think everyone's delighted to see him back. He's one of the sport's genuinely good blokes.
15.
Yeah, a lovely player as well. Of course, a dual world champion says it all, really.
16.
And I think that maybe, you know, he probably feels blessed to have been given a second chance. Of course, he's got all the talent in the world, but I just think as you get a bit older and get some success back, probably appreciate it a bit more. He was a brilliant junior player, and his rise to the top was pretty much meteoric,
22.
you know, and I think that you take things for granted as a young man, but the way he's playing now, I think he's enjoying the circuit. He won't enjoy that shot, and it wasn't a kick,
Mark
I can tell
Williams,
you,
22.
because he missed it on the thin side. It was just a terrible misjudgment.
One.
Before the breakthrough of Neil Robertson onto the professional snooker circuit, I suppose the most famous left-hander from outside of Britain and Ireland was South Africa's Perry Mans, runner-up in the World Championship in 1978. And when I arrived in Inverness today, got a phone call from David Hendon, one of the game's great statisticians, if not the best. He told me that it was Perry Mans' 70th birthday today. Former Masters champion at Wembley. He won it unbelievably without making a half-century break.
4.
Well, that's gone slightly wrong. Well, the point is he probably has to play a colour here, but the bulk colours are not overly appealing.
Neil Robertson, 4.
He was forced into that shot really by the circumstances of the previous shot and the fact that he was running a bit short on time.
Given that he was only 24 points ahead with 51 on the table, no timeouts taken, okay, it's the first frame, might have been advised to call a timeout there.
Interesting what was being said there in the interviews, that there is talk of a ranking tournament under this sort of format. Certainly a shot clock. I wasn't aware of that, but I think it might be a good innovation.
Absolutely all for it. I think Neil Robertson was right. Maybe make it 30 or 35 seconds and just tweak up the amount of timeouts slightly. But what you do there, you wouldn't really speed up the play of the vast majority of players. All you would do is prevent the really slow ones from bogging everything down.
Foul.
Well,
Williams 4.
in off by Robertson. More importantly, a couple of reds available for Williams.
Didn't seem to play that with a lot of confidence for some reason. Didn't quite punch it in his normal way. He's not worked out too badly.
Your thoughts on the shot clock for a ranking event, Neil?
Worth consideration for sure. I think we've got to accept some changes in the game, and we've already started to in the sport, all of them for the good of it. Like you say, you wouldn't want to be playing a ranking tournament with maybe 20 or 25 seconds. Great shot from Mark Williams.
1.
In this short format, it works perfectly, I think, in a 6-frame league format.
I'll tell you what, if they do institute a shot clock, all of the guys who've played in the Premier League since 2005 initially will have an advantage.
Just going to say that, actually. I do believe it would be an advantage. Just to be aware that it's not absolutely
5.
the be-all and end-all. It's just a question of getting a nice tempo, and that should be enough. Anyway, Mark Williams has got a chance of winning the frame here. There's work to be done, having said that. But whatever colour he takes, he won't need the final black. That's why he's checking, just to make sure that he
7.
can avoid putting the black along the cushion. He'd like to finish at the pink to win the frame, and with the points as they are, that is now possible.
8. $13. 15.
Overhead position slightly. Well, I thought he'd potted the green, especially at that
Mark
pace.
Williams 15.
Yeah, I felt it would drop in. I think he thought it was in as well. Getting from green to brown here is difficult. Well, I thought he would get, to be honest, I thought he would get a little further up the table than that. It was the worst positional shot I think I've ever seen him play.
Neil Robertson 3.
Well, plenty of breaks in the first match here tonight, but we didn't see a colours shootout. Well, a poor positional shot from green to brown for Robertson, and a terrible safety shot there. The guilty party, Williams.
And it's a very dangerous way of playing a safety shot, pushing the object ball close to a pocket like that. You're relying on getting the snooker. Once again, the cue ball travelling away from the next colour.
4.
Lead of 12. Also, all he wants is this. Wouldn't surprise me if he knocked it in. These are the kind of pots that he can get. Close enough, but so close that he might have left this.
Neil Robertson, 4.
This is one of those frames that's gone slightly wrong also. Mark would like to push this black on here, perhaps. This is... I thought he might just try and push it on. He played the double, which was a good idea as well. And just lining up the black. Got to pot the pink first, Mark.
Well, he's been described, Mark Williams, as one of the best potters from distance the game's ever seen. He'll need to be if he takes this one on. Not close, but the black partially came to his rescue, and getting out into the middle of the table is definitely to his benefit.
It's a pretty ragged opening frame, this one. Not of the standard we've seen previously tonight. I'm sure it'll warm up. But they all count, and these frames are the same as a century to win. Just add up to 1 on the board.
What a delightful pot from Williams. Now, can he double up?
Yeah, this one will be slightly tougher, but frame ball.
Just tremendous. It wasn't pretty until the conclusion. Pink and black of the highest quality. Williams leads 1-0. And this is how the frame reached its climax. Typical Williams. Super pink, even better black. A rueful smile. They all count the same.
The second frame, Mark Williams to break.
That, Neil, has been one of his greatest assets, Williams, the ability to nick frames that are close by potting super balls.
Yeah, there were 2 good pots at the end of a frame that wasn't all that pretty, but you've still got to pull out the frames in any way you can, and he's always been able to do that. I don't think he gets too affected by missing the odd ball. That's a good temperament, and I think, as it happens, Neil is quite similar in that way. There is a likeness in their games.
Yeah, certain players become very annoyed with themselves if they make mistakes. One that springs to mind, a really top-class individual who's had quite a bit of success on the professional snooker circuit, Stephen Maguire, who, when things aren't going well, when he's making mistakes he shouldn't do, finds it hard to cope with. Jamie Cope, funnily enough, is another as well. And I think if we were talking a couple of years ago, you'd include Ding Junhui in that category also.
Sometimes it's quite difficult to forget what's gone before at this game. The best players are the ones that do, because everyone has bad spells, everyone misses pots. It's a really good shot to the middle pocket, that. I mean, it come from a safety shot that Mark played, and I feel he believed he'd got it perfectly okay. So he didn't really fancy Neil to pot that.
Six. Seven.
Just thinking about players who, like Williams, don't tend to drop their head when the balls are conspiring against them. One player who's just come into my thoughts, the late Paul Hunter. And you know, Neil, it would have been his 32nd birthday today, Paul. What a terrible loss for the game. He was such a nice lad,
13.
apart from the fact he was a great player.
Yes, much missed, never forgotten. Tremendous cue power show there. I think the cue will, if anything, a little too far. He's on this red all right, just got to hold it for the next colour, which will be the blue, you'd think.
17.
Could go into the little cluster of 4 reds below the pink, doesn't have to. They're already quite well spread. It might be just to control the cue ball though. It's one possibility. So he doesn't have to play that. And the delicate little shot. The reds are quite nice actually.
22. $23.
That's quite short of speed.
27.
Grimace there from Neil. He knows he's got a difficult one now. He may have to play safe.
Neil Robertson, 27.
No on pots, balls, cushion first. Better than Williams.
And he's removed the red from the black spot, which opens things up as well.
8. Nine. $14. $15.
And that was a better shot than it looked. The knowledgeable members of the audience appreciating it. Hard to believe now, Neil, that at his worst, when he had
22.
that terrible slump, he went down to 47th in the provisional world rankings.
23.
It does seem very difficult to believe, but like you say, he had this spell where he fell in love with the game, made a few changes, I think, to his career. I think he might have changed his management team, a few things along the way, things that players do get that went wrong.
$28. 29.
The position of the pink here, easier for a right-hander than a southpaw.
Well, they've been pretty disgusted with that, in that the cannon he got has left it very
35.
awkward.
Touching ball.
Touching ball, nothing potable, play away, it's all he can do, and he has actually got the chance with the touching ball to play a telling safety shot. Cue ball certainly to the baulk cushion is the plan. I don't think he'll play in behind anything. Just to the cushion, really. Well, that is
Mark
a good
Williams,
safety.
35. Time out.
Well, around this stage of the first match, we put up the pot statistics for Fu and Selby. They were both 97% at the corresponding time. Here it's 83 and 82 respectively, lower than you would imagine from top-line professionals. It will improve.
Well, he's asked for a timeout here, as you saw, and to catch this red thin with the red close to a cushion, that's awkward. If you just hit too much of it, you can leave it on, so he's not played it that way. Might have drifted off a bit, but that would always be a possibility.
Mark Williams, 4.
On a table that's just put in for one night. Choice is to have it put back or to cut that red into the right corner. He's running out of time while he makes his mind up.
Go back. Stop the clock.
Deciding to get it put back. Doesn't want to play this thin safety shot, but he'll be aware that the first one might have just drifted off to from right to left as we look on that screen, so we'll have to allow for it next time.
Catch that.
I think we see tables running off quite often in tournaments, not just when they're in for one night, as Neil said. I remember at the Crucible a few years ago they had a nightmare with that sprung floor. Alan McManus played one shot at slow speed. It was like a boomerang.
Well, this one is drifting away, but this time I think he's made his allowance and relative adjustment, and that was okay. Yeah, funnily enough, I mean, the tables that roll off the least often are your fairly average club tables that have been in the same place for 30 years or whatever, and they tend to run pretty true more often than not. Sure he played that. He didn't put his hand up to apologise. If he did play this, it's a mighty good shot and plant with the reds so far apart. I'm not convinced personally.
4.
Well, giving Robertson maximum benefit of doubt, I would say that at the very least it was highly speculative. The main objective of the shot was safety.
10.
You get the feeling that this frame is going to revolve around that red. It's just a question of not only the red but the black being next to it. If you can find a way of potting it and getting onto a colour, then I think the frame will be his.
$17.
No, that's not a good shot. It really isn't a good shot whatsoever. Now, it seems to me that the chance of getting from colour to red are virtually nil here. So, time to play safe.
Brown ball.
Yes, apply the handcuffs. Especially with the red so close to the black.
18.
Yeah, it's not really a shot that can play a swerve to hit the red.
Foul. And a miss.
Well, Mark looks a little bit
7.
unsure about that, a little bit baffled as to whether it was a foul. Let's have another look, shall we? Let's see this. No, it was correct call from Paul Collier, in my opinion, Phil.
No doubt.
Of course, you know, in your local leagues, if there's a red and a colour that close out of a snooker, you just crash it at 200 miles an hour, so nobody knows. In which case, you usually get the benefit of the doubt.
6.
Yes, in the local leagues, it's a case of a player failing to escape from a snooker and the referee shouting foul, and a whole team adding the word miss. There's all kinds of arguments and stuff going on. Miscalculations on the scoreboard.
13.
Paul Collier got that one spot on, and in the end, Robertson is just about to take the frame, and I do believe that while
18.
he's not played many matches and his previous experience in the league have not been particularly good ones, this is a very important frame for him.
22.
When you've had as much success as Neil Robertson over the last couple of years, you want more, and he would dearly love to win this Premier League title, and every capability of doing so.
27 on the frame.
The two Australians on the front row will be happy with that. Their man, Neil Robertson, has recovered from the loss of the first frame to draw level, 1-1.
A modest 38 from Mark Williams.
Thank you, frame 3.
Honours even.
Neil
4 frames
Robertson
left.
to break.
Actually, highest break is 38, but it's by Neil Robertson. Just to be absolutely spot on. It's not been the most fluent snooker we've seen in the competition thus far, but for both players, it's a mightily important match. By the way, if you fancy a small major on the upcoming Ashes series down under, shown here, of course, on Sky Sports. You might want to ask Neil Robertson his opinion. The last time England were down there for an Ashes series, he didn't only predict that the Aussies would win, he actually predicted by how many tests they would win. On the mark he was.
What, he predicted 5-0, did he? Oh dear.
Not only did he predict it, he actually predicted it in a press conference. He didn't predict making contact with the blue there, though. I think this is the best break-building opportunity we've seen in the contest so far.
He's over-screwed by some margin. I mean, all these fast cloths, you can always do that, where you just get into the cue ball too much, but he had quite a lot of room there to play with.
Mark Williams, 8.
Well, I'm not sure if that red will cut. It would be mighty thin to the left corner from where the cue ball is, so whichever shot you play, you've got to be careful. Playing down that same side of the table. This way, Mark is further out from that left cushion, so he might take this on. He's decided to take a risk. The Reds have really spread nicely. Of course, the black is the problem ball, so that was appreciated, that shot.
3. 4.
So you have to be content with scoring from the pink.
When Barry Hearn took over Snooker's reins in the spring, the one thing he decided
11.
very quickly was to change the ranking system so that the rankings were revised 3 times a season. That's why Mark Williams now up to world number 6.
17.
He was the world number 1, of course, between 2000
18.
and 2002, and then he, again for the 2003-2004 campaign. And given his pedigree, not inconceivable that he could regain top spot again in the future.
Yeah, I think when he was
24.
at his very best, he was very consistent. He went an awfully long time without losing a first round match, didn't he? Which is where, under the old ranking system, that the points really built up.
25.
Well, I can put a number on that, in fact, Neil. Between February 1998 and November 2003, unbelievably, he won his first match in 48 consecutive ranking events.
And that takes some doing, and that's the mark of the player he was then. So he lost it for a while, but the signs are very good that he's playing somewhere near that now again. So it's been an excellent break. He got in with a really good shot on a yellow to smash the reds open, which from there he's not really looked back.
The press corps had decided to award Williams with a cake when he won his 50th consecutive first round match.
34.
Basically because we wanted to eat it, of course, but we weren't able to present it.
35.
So you probably ate it anyway, did you? Is that what happened? Didn't tell him about it. It's been a good break. I think he felt that he had a bad contact actually on the previous shot. It seemed okay and it didn't stop the cue ball too much. He won't be looking at playing on the black at any point. He can win the frame 41. Just on red pinks.
42.
Going on averages, almost certain Williams to arrive at the 250 century break mark for his career at some point during the season.
Yeah, and I think he's a player that probably could have made more, in that he's got to 70 and 80 and not always gone 55. Through with it for a number of years.
Could not agree more. But £1,000 bonus
56
in the Premier League for making a century sharpens the focus.
Might just inspire him to make one, especially now the frame is secure. This has been an excellent break.
62.
Best run of play in the match for me, the player.
63.
And what this means, of course, is that in order to obtain maximum points, Neil Robertson has to win the closing 3 frames.
70.
Well, it may be difficult for Mark to make the century. Neil is just looking at getting something from this match now, which is not impossible, but the odds have gone against it even more by this break from Mark. Nowhere near, no century.
Mark Williams 70 on the frame.
But he doubled his highest break of the match, a run of 70, and Williams back in front. Second appearance in the partycasino.com Premier League so far this season.
Mark Williams to break.
He lost his first, can't afford to lose this one. By the way, both of these two back in action next week from the Spice Ball Leisure Centre in Banbury. Robertson plays Ding Junhui, Marco Fu plays Mark Williams.
Well, he was up on that shot very quickly, and I think he knew his fate there. Tell you that Neil can get through to the red.
We've been stressing the point all evening, really, that the league this year is so tight, and yet if Williams were to win here this evening and then again next week, he would be in the semi-finals. No ifs, buts or maybes.
5.
He's got the option, if he plays the brown, to go into the pack off one cushion at speed, but it's not guaranteed to be a shot.
Nine. Ten.
Well, despite the blue not being on its spot, he managed to finish top side of it.
$15.
Well, he'd like to play the cannon onto the red next to the black. I'm not quite sure it's on. Couldn't quite do it.
16.
He wouldn't want to play the black, because if he pots the black now, the red and black would be covered. That's a good positional shot.
In and out of ball, running side, off a couple of cushions. Just a little straight to be ideal.
22.
Yes, and no man's land.
Just has one chance here, Phil. A bit of left-hand side around two cushions between brown and yellow into the pack at great speed. That's the shot he's tried. Too much.
Yes, high tariff. The one good thing with that shot, of course, it was such an easy
27.
pop. It wasn't really going to be a problem knocking it in. Played a number of shots in that break
27.
with extreme side spin on the cue ball. Something, of course, that his fellow Australian, the late Eddie Charlton, always used to try to avoid at all costs. They were from the same country, those two, but in terms of the way they play snooker, from a different planet.
Well, certainly the game of snooker has moved on since those days. You mentioned Perry Mann's birthday today, and like you say, I mean, the notion that he should win a tournament and not make a 50 break in it, I think he made a 48 or 49 was his highest. It's just beyond belief, really.
One.
Tell you another thing, Eddie Charlton would have been seething at that fluke. Of that you can be sure.
Yes, Eddie Charlton, the only man who found a fluke more offensive than Willie Thorne.
He's taken a risk here. Well, he's done well there, you know. It's actually a well thought out shot. Just developing that red and pink and knowing that he'd be on the black. That was a really good shot. So all of a sudden he's back in the frame here. Possibly more to come.
12.
Might play a little development of a red. Again, very
13.
quick thinking play. Not for the first time, over screwed there. Still got one to the middle. Well, he has at the moment. As long as the pink goes on its spot and not behind the pack.
19. Mark Williams, 19.
Neither player firing on all cylinders.
No, definitely right, Phil, but there is a match to be won here, and
1.
Doesn't always tell you in the results page exactly how you've gone on to do it.
Timeout.
Timeout called by Robertson. Second use of the timeout by the Antipodean. Yes, in snooker sometimes you play well and you lose. On other occasions you play mediocre and win.
Yeah, and when you're playing all around the country trying to finish in the top 4 places, just have to find a way of, on a bad day, getting a win or a draw. Once again, well directed. Didn't use too much
4.
speed. He didn't really have to break anything up, but just had to get the cue ball in the middle of it, which he's done.
Timeout. 1 left this frame now.
Well, rapidly calling his second timeout of the frame. That's why he was told by the referee Paul Collier that there's only 1 remaining in this frame. Only 2 remaining in the match as a whole. As yet, Williams yet to use 1 timeout.
The red on the black spot is annoying him. It's just in his way, really. Can't play on the black from it because it will just go in behind that red.
5.
That's the red he'd like to shift at some point. It would just open things up so much. Not quite on it this time, but if he can knock that red in and stay on the black, then he's well away.
11. Fourteen.
Well, the hard work may well have been done.
19. 20. 27. 28.
That's frame ball. No doubt now.
35. 36.
Robertson's highest break of the match so far, and he could not have arrived at a more timely juncture.
41. 43. 46. 50. $55.
Showing his true colours here.
Foul. Neil Robertson 55, Mark Williams 6. Frame Neil Robertson.
And so with a break of 55, Neil Robertson back on level terms. All three results still possible.
Thank you, ladies and gents. Frame 5. Neil Robertson to break.
Just feel like that Neil is just warming up now a bit, starting to play a bit better. That was a good break in the end in that last frame. Only 55, but the way he made it just made you feel that he was really getting into the match now at last, after a pretty slow start.
But this kind of pot for Williams, meat and drink. Yes. Floats those in. As if they're hanging on the lip of the pocket. And I think there's a case to be said for the next couple of frames. Up to this point, perhaps the two most important of the tournament so far. If Williams could win 4-2, he would be absolutely buzzing in terms of qualification. Robertson, although he'd have games in hand, would be in a spot of bother. Oh, well,
Mark Williams,
okay,
4.
positional considerations for the black aside, he should have potted it.
Yeah, I didn't see that one coming. That looked pretty regulation to me, this. Like you say, he had his mind on position. Some pressure on this pot if he takes it on. Cue ball to get it back towards the bulk area. He's playing with stun here, queuing down on this. Yeah, it was difficult, especially with the red over a pocket. It's a big fluke, despite him not being on a colour. Mark Williams is already walking around for his shot.
Neil Robertson 1.
Well, desire to get the cue ball under the ball cushion. In fact, he's got it on the bulk line. Well short of the plan.
Wow, excellent pot. With lots of screw. The black being there has made it awkward to play to go into the reds. This was a shot again. Great queuing. Well, he couldn't avoid the black there. I don't quite know what he was thinking of.
Six. Neil Robertson 6. Have a look at it.
Just a very thin edge sticking out of the red.
Inverness, you know, Neil, has produced a couple of well-known modern politicians, birthplace of Yvette Cooper, the recently installed Shadow Foreign Secretary, and the former Lib Dem leader Charles Kennedy. And I suppose, in snooker terms, this is still a marginal, could swing either way.
Could also be no overall majority as well. In other words, a drawn game, Phil.
Six.
Well, to keep the political theme going, he spotted a red and then a blue.
Timeout.
It's one of these situations where there's plenty of reds in open play. He's just got to play, you know, one key shot here, land on a high colour, put it on its spot, and he'll be away. That might be the shot.
$14. $15.
The ultimate goal for Mark Williams, of course, to become the first ever Welsh winner of the Premier League. He's been beaten in 3 finals. In 2000, he lost 9-5 to Stephen Hendry.
21.
2005, 6-0 to Ronnie O'Sullivan.
22.
2003, he lost 9-5 to a man we saw in our first match, Marco Fu.
Yeah, sure.
He'd certainly be reassured to win this frame, though. That would mean he'd get something from this match, either a draw or a win, and he really is in prime position now. Had a good think about a shot 4 or 5 shots ago, which I think
30.
It's a good way to use the timeouts, really. It was a key shot which has put him right in amongst them now.
Yes, and of course, if Williams were to win this frame, it would mean that what we were talking about in the opener, Robertson's 100% record against him, would be over.
$45. $46.
I'd like to have been straighter on this. Might as well play a little nudge. Well, he's managed to hold it for a red in the middle, which is enough to keep the break going, and just looking at what he needs here, well, he's red colour red will just about seal the frame.
54.
That was a kick, nearly missed the pot. He was straight up on that. We've not seen many of those tonight. Might be the first or second one we've had. Cue ball lost all its pace. and a bit of direction as well. But I've seen worse. Yes, normally in the arenas for this tournament it's very, very warm indeed. Not so warm in there tonight.
60.
As you said, Neil, kicks a rarity. And now, impregnable in frame number 5.
67.
Can Williams go on to 3 figures?
68.
Well, we'll know more after this shot, Phil, because you're going to play the cannon on the red to the left cushion.
75.
Very good.
76.
Just got to make sure he finds a route back through bulk for the next red. Well, he's done that very well. He played it with a lot of right-hand side. He's after the grand, Phil. Desperate for it.
81.
Not as straightforward as normal, because the yellow is off its spot, and for a left-hander on that side of the table, just a wee bit awkward.
85.
Keeping the cue ball short of the yellow has made things a little easier in terms of reaching it, and it's there.
87.
There's certainly no lashing at the colours here like Mark Williams has done throughout his career when there's no money for a 100 break. This will be impeccable, I'm sure.
94.
Yes, pound signs in front of Mark Williams's eyes, like those spectacles are in front of Dennis Taylor's.
99.
Didn't even play on the black.
105.
Grand the prize, grand the break. Williams 1-0 and 2 on ahead. Regardless of missing the black,
in the frame,
he's going to be 3-2 in front. He will leave Inverness with his unbeaten record in the Premier League intact, but will he leave with a victory? Two ahead of Neil Robertson.
Final frame of this evening, Mark Williams to break.
It's been a good evening snooker here in the Highlands of Scotland. How will it be completed? I'll tell you what, if Williams can win this one as well, the world champion and the world number 1, also the newly crowned World Open champion, will be at the foot of the table in trouble.
Time out. Got one left.
Yeah, he doesn't like the look of this one. The path back to the bulk area, not helped by those 2 reds on the right of the table. He plays the red next to the black. He's got to avoid those. Well, there is Neil just looking at that now. He's just probably that angle's throwing it a bit wider than it is, but if he was to play off that red, he would need to just swing the cue ball wide of the 2 reds. That's what he was looking at.
statisticians have been hard at work, and this is the table as it stands. 3 players on 4 points, Williams being one of them, so if he wins this frame, he'll go top. Selby's reign as the number 1 will have lasted approximately 2 hours and 6 frames.
He'll be happy to make the top 4. I'm sure of that. That's what it's all about. Go back to last year, Sean Murphy was he was struggling all the way through the season, wasn't he? And then he just crept into the top 4, almost up for none. And of course he started off a level playing field again. Went on to lift the title.
If you're wondering how the semi-finalists are determined, well, at the end of the league, number 1 plays number 4, number 2 plays number 3, but with the personnel we've got in the tournament this year, it doesn't really matter. It's tough from top to bottom.
Yeah, Ronnie O'Sullivan's played 3, drawn 3, like a draw specialist in the league now. It hasn't lost anything, but I don't know if he'd be absolutely guaranteed if he kept on going away with draws rather than wins. It's a pretty good cue ball there. He just played it with topspin just to stop it from drifting up the table, which he's done. I think both players have got to the point where they're putting a lot into this frame now. You can sense it out there. Really coming down to the nitty-gritty of this match.
With only 1 timeout remaining, Robertson wasn't about to take it there. He needs to keep 1 at least in reserve.
Yeah, you've always got to keep 1 there, just in case you get something that absolutely blows your mind as far as a shot to play, an escape from a snooker or something, don't you?
Well, that was bold from Williams, it really was, knowing full well he'd leave this red.
This could be a situation where the pink spot is covered and so are all the others, which means that Paul Collier's got to put it in line behind the pack, not touching them but in some sort of a line. So what it does tell us is that the high colours are not that available. I didn't want to kiss that. Oof.
8.
That's horrible.
Just tickled the cue ball in behind the blue mobile, even awkward cueing for Williams.
I think that's the shot, Phil. You have to play it in such a way that you make sure you don't stick that red up the table, so that's why he went slightly over to the left with the cue ball. Now then, how do you like these, queuing over the entire pack on the long red? This has got re-rack potential, just if he plays the same shot here.
Yes, with the bunch close together, 1 red down in bulk, preventing the conventional safety, and very few points between them. Yes, an environment for a re-rack, although after this shot, maybe not.
Well, he thought he'd got that. It was a tremendous effort. Anyone who's ever played snooker will know that when you're bridging down over a ball or numerous balls like that, it's very awkward cueing.
Pink and black both off their spots. Black in fact on the side cushion. Blue not where it should be either. You get the feeling this might well be a scrappy conclusion to the evening. Nothing outlandish will be played. Too much at stake.
I didn't mean to hit it quite that thin. Cue balls travelled up and down the table. And the red's one thing, but it's just finding a way of getting onto a high colour that's going to be the awkward part. Well, I'm not sure he played the cannon like that, and he may have enough of the pink left poking out to knock it in, but not an easy pot by any means. A little bit jabby on that one in the end.
Yes, and the only positive for Williams, the cue ball pretty close to the side cushion, and position for Robertson will be hard to achieve. To avoid all those reds and to drop where he has, more than acceptable nil.
Yeah, indeed. He'd like to get maybe the pink on its spot, or certainly in play at some point. Maybe on the black spot or wherever it will actually go, because it would be quite difficult to win the frame with the high colours out of it.
5.
Well, this is the shot then. Played on the black, although as a left-hander he didn't want to be having to come this side of the table using the rest. He wanted to be right behind it.
Time out.
Now, he's taking his last time out. He figures it's worth the risk here to take it and leave him with none, because he feels this is the important shot.
All things considered, I think this is a very sensible move.
And sometimes it's not only the fact that it's a shot that requires a bit of thought, but you need a bit of time to compose yourself on these ones. If he knocks it in, he should be on the red that's just close to the black spot, just below it.
Neil Robertson is in the process of putting together quite a career. Won the World Under-21 Championship in 2003. He's the most successful non-British or Irish player in world ranking events, having won 6 of them. 2 Grand Prix, a Welsh Open, a Bahrain Championship, the World Open,
20,
and, most importantly of all, the World Championship at the Crucible in early May this year, beating Graham Dodd 18-13. .2010's also bought his first maximum break in professional competition at the China Open back in April. And last season, he became one of only a very select group of players to have made over 40 centuries in a season in competition.
28.
He'd like to add to all that. a good run in the Premier League, which is the one competition he's never excelled at, and it would start here with a draw. It would only mean he's got 1 point and he's still bottom, but he's got lots of
33.
matches still to play. But you've got to start somewhere, and I think this would actually mean quite a lot to him with regards to the league.
And as we've said before, if he does get a point, it would set up a blockbuster of an opening
41.
match at Banbury in 7 days' time against Ding.
42.
Well,
49.
quite there yet. Red colour needed. He's not perfectly on this one. Excellent shot. And he looks at the scoreboard, which will tell him and his enthusiastic supporters there in the front row that this is frame ball.
And I think the way it's gone, Robertson will feel
57.
marginally the happier of the two. Williams in front at 1-0, 2-1 and 3-2, remember.
Well, they're both happy.
Come on, Aussie, come on.
I think you're right. I think Neil will be quite pleased with this. He's, as you say, he's never led.
65.
He's always been playing catch up, and he's got something on the board here in the league.
In the end, nothing to choose between the Welsh Wizard and the Melbourne Machine. All 7 players in this year's tournament now have at least 1 point on the board. Williams remains unbeaten in the competition. It's 3-3 here in Inverness tonight.
Yeah, great night of snooker, wasn't it? 2 cracking matches for you. Let's just have confirmation of both of those. We started with Mark Selby, emphatic win there against Marco Fu, 5 frames to 1, and then Neil Robertson and Mark Williams, honours even in that one. All that means this is how the Premier League now looks. Mark Selby with that win, he stays top of the Premier League, but look how even it is up there. 4 players there, or the top 3 all on 4 points, and then the next 3 on 3, and the world champion Neil Robertson with just the 1 point. That's it, that's all we've got time for. Thanks for watching, have a good evening, and we'll see you next Thursday.